evening, everybody. My name is Brooks Downs, and I'm an alcoholic. I noticed that there is not a clock in here, so if I go over, somebody just give me the signal. My home group is the morning meditation group at the Triangle L&O Club in Cary, North Carolina, and my sobriety date is January 7th of 2002. And I, of course, have a sponsor, and a sister sponsee is here tonight by chance. It's very good to see her here, and I sponsor women and they sponsor women, so we get to give this thing away. And I get to tell you what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. So I always say I am a corn-fed Midwestern gal. I am from Indiana, Hoosier born and bred. I grew up in Michigan. And I moved to North Carolina from right outside of Chicago, so I have those little states right there that that I wreaked havoc in for a little while in my life. I am the second youngest of 6 kids, and I grew up in Michigan, so we lived on like a dead end. On a court. We were the last house on the end, and the whole length of the street was a chain link fence, which was a park. So I grew up next to a park. We had a sled hill, we had a skate pond, fishing pond, whatever, and all the ball fields and everything. And we had a little log cabin there that you could do arts and crafts in. So, I believe that I had I had an excellent childhood in my eyes, and I remember on a Saturday that my dad and I were going to go out and run errands, and my mom was taking my sister and one of her friends in the neighborhood to go to the local, I think it was a Farmer Jack's supermarket, and they were going to sell like the Girl Scout candy or the whatever, brownies, whatever, I think it was Girl Scout cookies or whatever. So, we were parked in the driveway, my mom and dad kissed goodbye, and then we went and ran errands, and we came, when we came back to the Farmer's Jack, there was an ambulance in front of the door. And we had brought the girls lunch, so, about halfway there, my dad told me to just turn around and go back to the car and to look for my sister. And it ended up that my mother had a brain aneurysm, and she fell off her chair at the table, and that was the last time that I ever got to see my mom, was that morning. And I did find my sister in the parking lot, and her friend's dad came and got us, and, we went over to their house. And, the perception, I don't think that my life wasn't excellent anymore, but my life changed. So that happened when I was 11 years old. And my aunt came from Indiana, my dad's sister, with her daughter, and came to help us, to raise us. And her daughter she drove a little yellow MGB car, little sports car, and she got on the swim team, and she played softball, and I just looked up to her. I thought she was cool, and she played sports. I played sports, and she was very good at them. And I don't know how long into it. Maybe if I was 12 or something, we were on the way to this sled hill, and they always partied on the way to the sled hill. I knew what was going on, but this one time, for whatever reason, they asked me to join in, and it was just like a rite of passage in our family. It was just a nonchalant happening. It was just like, it's time. And and I started partying, and I know we did a lot of moving, and in my first step, when I did out the written from the first drink to the last drink, I found out that, like when I was in high school, I got put in a closed unit of mental ward, and, I had, pretty much from there, I just kept getting shipped off to different family members, and, the reality of it is I come from a family of partiers, so they were sending me off to party, really and truly. I mean, it was like very beneficial for me to party amongst they sent me off to Great Falls, Montana one summer, and my sister's husband was a party animal, so, we just synced right in. So, I always say that, I got taught how to party, and I get to be taught how to stay sober by coming into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. So, pretty much, the short of it is that while I was partying, I got fired from a lot of jobs, and I didn't realize it was happening at the time, because it was, it was just like you have to pick up and you got to pay your bills, so you just get another job, you just move on. And I know today how much damage that caused my self-esteem, and it's taken me all the time that I've had in Alcoholics Anonymous to rebuild that in myself, and with a power greater than myself and the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. So, what happened was, I said there's three musketeers. I called us the three musketeers. The three of us would be the organizers of the party, and we would be usually the last three standing. And one time we're partying, and JT, she went back in the bedroom, and we thought she was just passing out. And she comes out an hour, however, we were watching a movie, she comes out and she says, I can't do this anymore. I've called my dad and he's come to get me, and that one telephone call has changed all three of our lives. She ended up going into a 30-day treatment program, and from there she followed the suggestion that it would be beneficial for her not to go home back into the same circumstances, and they recommended a halfway house up in Hickory, North Carolina, and she followed that because she wanted something different. She was tired, and I started going to meetings with her, and I saw her walking around with, when she would come to visit, she would have this little black book and a 3-ring binder, little notebook paper, and she'd always be looking in the book and writing things, in her notebook. And I can honestly say that I don't remember anything from that whole year and a half that I went to any meetings with her, except for one time. I still smoked back then, and it was a Cookies on the Table meeting in Bethlehem, North Carolina, and we're all standing outside after the meeting, and we get done with the cigarette, and I was not socially inclined at that time. I'm not really sure that I'm all that into it today, but you guys have taught me how to be a little bit more accepting of it. So I just didn't really want to talk to anybody. And this dude, he starts talking to me. He's got how we are a lot that usually wouldn't mix. So he's got his hair slicked back in a ponytail. He's got his sleeves cut off. He's got tattoos down both of his arms. He's got a prosthesis from his knee down. And he starts talking to me, so I talk back reluctantly, and the question comes, well, what do you do for a living? And I was a bartender. So outside of an AA meeting, I get to say, oh, I'm a bartender. And that guy, he said that his best friend was a bartender, and that his best friend did good works as a bartender in helping people along the way. And for whatever reason, that made me feel a part of. I mean, it's just the magic of the presence. One of the things about that little black book that it was my girlfriend that she carried around, there's a passage in there and it says, keep a listening ear, an ear bent to catch the gentle knocking at the door of your heart by the Spirit of God. Then open your heart and let God in. And I think that happened that day for me. And I ended up getting the ultimatum for the relationship. I got fired from my job. I lost my apartment. I got to move in with my father. I was saying I had to back then, but, and I am walking. I got 2 different jobs. I got fired from both those jobs. One of the things I remember like starting to party at 2:30 in the morning, because after I got all the beer cans off the bar, and this is like at least 2:30 in the afternoon, and I get home and I have a fresh 12-pack. I'm carrying the cooler, and I have one cracked in my hand, and I'm going down to the pool. I ended up face planting, and it's the blacktop, so I've still got scars from it. But I didn't spill a drop out of that open beer. That was my little pride thing going on. So, in that 1.5 year period of time, I had one time I got fired from my job, from the bartending job. And the guy, my boss told me, sat me in the office and he said, Brooks, there's no way that somebody can drink like you do without extracurricular activities going on. And he said, if you get help and you show me that you want to get help, you can start working back tomorrow. You can have your job back tomorrow. And, I had enough money for a 12-pack. I just went and poured it in the cooler and did what I did, that night. And, the next day I woke up and the 4 horsemen were on me. And I was like, I knew that there was a way out, and I didn't know I couldn't drink. I just didn't know. I had been drinking daily from 18 to 40 years old. I didn't hang around with anybody that didn't drink. I just could not fathom, just like it talks about in our big book, I couldn't fathom living with or without the drink. And I got the ultimatum for the relationship, so I really did want to try something different, and I had been thinking about 1.5 years about trying to be sober, and I had been traveling up to Hickory and spending at the most 3 full days up there partying on the way up, and I always knew I was going to be partying on the way when I got back to work, so I had my cat and my dog. I had my cat and my dog in the car, and my cat was howling, and my head was howling, and I said, my brain was telling me in the first hour that I could come back down to Raleigh and drink, a couple times a month and be able to get away with it and everything would be fine. The second hour, my cat's kind of settling down. My brain tells me, maybe on the holidays, I'll be able to, come back down to Raleigh and party and no harm, no foul. And by the third hour going up to Hickory, North Carolina, my brain told me that I never had to drink again. And one morning when I was sitting in the dark, my partner had already left for work, and I had a pot of coffee brewing. I was sitting at the kitchen table, and that little black book was sitting on the table, and I picked that book up, and I asked for help. I wasn't speaking to anybody, and I ended up getting filled through and through with a power greater than myself. And you know, it's kind of scary because I didn't know what was going on. Of course, today I know what, you know, that it was a spiritual experience, but it was kind of scary sitting there in the dark and having that happen. And you know, my brain was fogged when I got here because I play hard, and I work hard and play hard, and I just partied hard, and I have been doing it for a long time. So I got a power greater than myself directed me to the beginnings of 2 sentences to write in a book, and that's how I started doing my, I read out of that. It's a 24 hours a day book. The first paragraph has a question, and I just answered the question. My first year of recovery, that's what I did in my quiet time. So I had asked the first lady up in Morganton to be my sponsor, and she said no, and she said I should get somebody in my area code. So we know how long ago, 20 years, it was like the house phones were still well in use. Not everybody had a cell phone. I think I got one a couple years later, but you know, I didn't really know what she was talking about with the area code. I get it now that we would be talking on the phone a lot. And you know, in traveling around and going to different meetings, I found this group. It was at 10 o'clock in the morning. It was in a house, and it had a great big picture window. They had like comfy chairs and sofas, and the sun would shine through, the morning sun would shine through that room, and it was just so very comfortable for me. There was a lady that shared. When she shared, her words just came into my heart, and I got to stretch my wings again and ask that lady to be my sponsor. She had not had a sponsee yet, but her daughter had been egging her on to get a sponsee, so I got the privilege of being able to work with that lady, and she's a very spiritual entity. I just got to see her when I just went up to Hickory a couple months ago, and I got to spend some time with her. And you know, I don't know if it's because of the first sponsor, but she just has, I just get to rest with her. I get to go and be with her, and everything is just good. Like, my soul is good when I'm with my first sponsor. I am very grateful for that, even 19 years later. So we do the work, and I remember in my second year of recovery, I got diagnosed with breast cancer. And I will be so forever grateful that I got to come into the rooms of, I probably would not have gotten treatment for the breast cancer. I probably would have never even known that I had breast cancer, let alone go to the doctor. Because it's my first time in my life that I had insurance at 40 years old. And I remember, like, the whole thing about the breast cancer treatment was like, it was just like in AA. All I had to do was show up, and they told me what to do, literally. I mean, the people I got in at Duke, and they literally just told me what to do. And, I remember I had a mastectomy, so I'm feeling like, like how we all feel different in the selfish, self-centered, and self-seeking way of things when we're up in our heads, like we're not the same as everybody else. Well, I was really feeling different then, and my sponsor just calls me up and says, I'm picking you up for a meeting, I'm picking you up for home group, and off we went, and I got a bunch of hugs from my home group members, and I felt right at home. And I know that I started that story because I knew we had the date set for the fifth step. So I have my notebook right by the front door, and I drive like she's half an hour away. So I drive out there and I go to my back seat to get my notebook, and it is not there. So I go to the front door and I don't have my notebook, and she's like, well, you just need to turn around and go get it, and I'll see you. And she was like keeping time, and that's exactly how it happened. I went home and we proceeded to do the fifth step, and I didn't have a revolutionary change or anything, but I got to move more into the trust of forming a true partnership with another human being by doing that. We had already, she already was getting to know me. When she got me on the phone, it would be an hour. I'd be pacing like it was for years, because I got pretty high energy. I'd just be pacing when we were on the phone. I had a really long cord on the house phone, so anyway, I'm not exactly sure what happened. I know that I did what it said in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous for 6 and 7, and did the quiet time and reviewed, and I commenced to writing out my 8th step list, and I kept my 8th step list and didn't do anything with it until I ended up getting divorced and spending a year by myself and writing out another 4th step at 5 years sober. And at that point I had, a lot more emotional sobriety in me, and I got to see clearer what my part is, what my part has been for my whole entire life. And I ended up moving back to Raleigh with my 4th step, and there was a lady that I had seen at the meetings, and I just asked her if she would do my 5th step with me. She said yes without hesitation, and I got to ask her to be my sponsor. She hesitated a little bit, but she did say yes, and we got to do 6 and 7 work. And I know my first sponsor, she followed the directions in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, but this other sponsor, my second sponsor over in Cary, she had worked with a lot of women, and we got to do work on 6 and 7, and that's the meat and potatoes for me, where I get to start having a new perspective. Like I have become aware, and I get to start operating in the opposites of my thinking, and trying to relieve myself and ask a power greater than myself to be rid of my old ideas and behaviors from my old ideas. And I was then able to do some amends. And I have the 9th step amends were very humbling for me. I needed to do the 6 and 7 work, and I worked diligently with my girls, and so that there can be a change in thinking, a change in perception. And I had some very heartfelt amends. I got to make amends to my partner of 5 years in sobriety, 5 years drinking together, and we're very good friends. We're like just old friends now, and the 10, 11, and 12, my home group is an 11-step meeting. If you ever want to come, it's at the Triangle Alano Club, 6:30 to 7:30, Monday through Sunday. We're always there, and we'll look for you. It's a great place to catch the sunrise and a great way to start your day. So I learned how to sit still for 5 minutes and try to calm my brain a little bit, and I would go to that meeting while I still lived in Hickory because it fit in with my schedule. So, when I moved, Hickory had a district, and I got to be a grapevine rep in my district, and I made a little display, and I took it to all the meetings and asked the people, if I could say something about the grapevine, talked about the subscriptions being the only way that the grapevine gets supported. And, when I moved down to the Raleigh area, they had intergroup down there, which I didn't know anything about. So how it ended up, how it works is that my home group, when I made up my home group immediately, they needed an intergroup rep. So off to intergroup I went, and I have lots of stories. It's in downtown Raleigh. I would get lost every single time. And my sobriety car ended up dying there. I had a sponsee that needed to get back to the healing transitions. I had her with me to go to the meeting while I went to the district meeting and or the intergroup meeting. Anyway, it ended up that the lady had moved from the West Coast. I think she was in California and Nevada, and she moved, and she was on fire for service, on fire. And she brought the idea to the Raleigh area about the hotline. So when an alcoholic called the intergroup, then they would get an answering system. The answering system would page us, then we would page back to the answering service, and then the answering service would give us the person's cell phone number. So this lady brought it into fruition because her experience, strength, and hope that when an alcoholic called the hotline, another alcoholic answered the phone, and I got to be a part of that process. And of course, when you're in it, you don't really realize, but I mean, that is like, there's a lot of history in that. For the rest of Raleigh's existence, we're going to have the hotline, and it has, I have a sponsee from it anyway. When we have a split second when an alcoholic calls, if they have the willingness to pick up the phone and call, and it's absolutely wonderful if another alcoholic can answer the phone. So that was the beginning of my service in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I had, in Tradition 1 it talks about the unity, and I had, that little black book that I had the spiritual experience when I was holding. Both of my home groups used that book, and I got to sit through business meetings with them, with all of us discussing about taking that book out of the meeting because it's not conference approved literature. I had a very tough time, especially in my home group in Hickory, because that book was, that was my spiritual experience, right? I got sober off that book, is my feeling. So it was very close to my heart. I was very emotional about it. By the time I moved down to Raleigh, it was a little bit more far removed, but it's still a very powerful book to me. And, we had, it took some years, but we ended up incorporating another meditation book in and let the 24 hours a day go. And it was still a bit emotional, but in operating in the unity and what's best for the group, then I knew that was the best thing to do. We all talked about it, and it was definitely a group conscience to work in that. And I have there was a lady in my home group that she was the GSR for the home group, and she comes to me, she's on it, she's talking about it all the time, during meetings, and she's at the home group business meetings reporting, and she's got this big, huge 3-ring binder, and she's flipping through, giving us the report, and I'm like, she's got it going on. And then she comes to me and she's like, Brooks, I can't do this anymore. I don't have time for it. I forget exactly what she said, but she asked me if I would be interested in it. And she was halfway done on a 2-year term, so I said, well, it's only a year. So I said, sure. And come to find out that my first district meeting that I go to, my sponsor is the DCM, of all things. So I think really and truly, if I recall, I absolutely did not have my GSR packet yet. The spirit of rotation came up. There were elections. I was getting the look from my sponsor, like the stare down when a position came up, and you start sweating a little, and I did the meek raising of the hand, and I ended up I took the registrar position because I'd rather be on a kayak than in front of a computer. So come to find out that the registrar position has very much computer work in it. So I always say about the registrar position, it's good, the computer survived, my family survived, and I survived that, the district survived that position. And, the DCM is one of my good friends, and he was saying, he's like, well, Brooks, I know you're probably not going to run, and like nobody else on the steering committee was going to run. So after home group, the day of elections, I'm in the hallway and I'm talking to somebody about, I don't think I'm going to run. I don't know if anybody knows who Newton Pritchard is, but he's in our home group and he does a lot of service. So he hears the conversation in the hallway and he just saunters by and he says, is that what God wants? So all day long I'm like, is that what God wants? So it ended up that it rolled around to the last position for the secretary, and there's a girl that she stood for every position, and she was a sister sponsee. She had been she was rotating out the GSR position. She loved service. She wanted the position, but I raised my hand like, and it ended up going to the hat. So if anybody knows about voting in Alcoholics Anonymous, if you can't get 2/3 of the vote, then it goes to the hat, and then God picks the person that is going to be in the position. And sure enough, I got to learn how to do more computer work, and I've been in the district, I figure like 10 years or something, so I got to, do the alternate DCM position, and, I am still, I still have a home group position. I'm sponsoring. I have by this time, I think already been the corrections rep for my home group, and I got to be a part of carrying a message into the minimum security women's prison in Raleigh, and I'm doing that on, every Tuesday. And, it talks about the sudden thought will come to you, and the sudden thought popped into my head. I was 14 years sober, and the thought pops into my head like, Brooks, you don't need to be going to so many meetings. And I was like, I'm having a conversation in my head. I'm like, what are you talking about? Because I'm still trying to go to any kind of meeting I can go to, right? Like 7 days a week if I can. And if I can go 2 times a day, I'm meeting people there or whatever. And, we talk about, I've heard in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous about like, I don't know which meeting is keeping me sober, so I'm not gonna quit going to any of my meetings. Well, I have no idea, out of all the stuff that, I mean, like, Alcoholics Anonymous is a way of life for me, so it's not like when people, it's not even, like, there's nothing hard about, like, showing up for a meeting for me, like, anyway, I couldn't tell you what thing that I was doing that I would have could have taken away that would make me not think about that, like to that thought would go away. Like I got to just keep on doing what it was I was doing, and I could honestly say I am so grateful today to be able to pick up that 14-year chip, because I don't know where that thought came from, but if I wasn't doing all that stuff, I know that I could have easily drifted. I could have given back so freely what AA has given to me. Like I could have just handed it all back with that one little thought. And it didn't even say to drink, but I have the gut feeling that could have led me down a path that took me away from Alcoholics Anonymous. And I have gotten, because of being in service work, I have gotten to do a service manual study in Raleigh with some area people, and there's like 4 past delegates in it, and what a humbling experience that is. Like, as we travel this path in Alcoholics Anonymous, like I've heard people talk about, like, the more I'm around, the less I feel like I know. And, to be amongst those seeming giants of service work, like to represent the state of North Carolina, and to stay in it. Like there's a lady that's on the AAWS board, Newton, he's a past trustee, and I mean, it's amazing to be amongst the people that have so much service in their hearts for Alcoholics Anonymous. And I know I have talked about like service work when I was DCM, that you could acquire a service sponsor. I've acquired a service sponsor, and I just recently acquired a service sponsee. So I have invited her to the service manual study. If we're going to do it Zoom, so if anybody's interested in that, then get with me after the meeting. I'll give you my telephone number, and I don't know what time it is, but I am I'm running past the third legacy, and I am so very grateful to my journey in Alcoholics Anonymous. Like my journey, like it just kind of seems boring. Like, for me, it's like it's just been the simplicity of putting one foot in front of the other. And like if I show up, then I get to do stuff, and I have, I mean, there's some. At one point in my sobriety, something would happen, like I got the chill bumps, like something would happen, and I'd be like, I can't get any better than this. It just can't possibly get any better than this. And then, you know what? The next thing happened that was, and I just know that it's going to happen like that. This is my last thing. I had the willingness to sign up to be, I was second year DCM, so there's 3 of us in the room, and one of us needs to take the chair position for the site investigation committee. So, so I had already thought about it, and I have lots of willingness. My service sponsor tells me, when I got my last chip from him, he said how much willingness I had, and I had my alternate DCM behind me saying, we can do this. And the site investigation for all the Area 51 events, 2 years out, we have to contact all the hotels and set up all the contracts, get the bids out, and see who brings it back. So, nobody else raised their hand, so I didn't have any problem getting that service position. So I literally, after the assembly weekend was over and I'm at home and I'm thinking about the position, I'm like, oh my God, I've got to get up in front of the whole assembly and talk. And I'm telling you, the fear, it just came over me. My sponsor probably, she never told me to knock it off, but she did say, Brooks, is the assembly here right now? And I'm like, because, it was like half a year away that I would have to get up in front of the people. So my sponsor's very good about giving me a different perspective. And, from having, we literally had to get to work, and there was, so much work involved that I didn't even really have time to think about, being scared to get up on the podium. And, that position, it was a year out of my life, and it is one of the toughest things that I've ever done in Alcoholics Anonymous. And it is one of the most unifying things that I have ever done in Alcoholics Anonymous. I absolutely knew that I could not do that job myself, and a large part of me, my pride part of me, wanted to do everything. And from here till most of the DCMs, that's what they did, is they just handled the whole situation by themselves. And I started reaching out to all of the other DCMs and alternate DCMs and asking them to help, and everybody obliged, and I learned from that, how powerful Alcoholics Anonymous is, that, we all have our own God-given talents, and they're going to come out if we have the willingness to be a part of. And, I had some lady on that, she said, Brooke, you did a great job. And my alternate DCM was the mastermind behind the computer, but she doesn't talk to the people, and I got to talk to the people, and we made an excellent team in that whole scenario. And I did end up getting up and not making an ass out of myself at the assembly, so that's always a grand thing when you're in front of a bunch of people. But it also, there's so many things that I've gotten to walk through the fear and just move into the courage. I get to have the courage to walk through fear, because the fear surely has not left me. I'm like, and I don't know what I'm doing. I'm the Area 51 Grapevine Coordinator. I don't know what I'm doing, but I already told somebody in the room, 2 years when it's done, I'll be knowing what I'm doing by the time I rotate out of the position. So I am very grateful to have been asked to speak, and I'm very grateful to be a part of Courtney's sobriety, and she's got a special place in my heart, it's a soul thing. So when she called and asked me to speak, it was very heartening, and I hope everybody has a wonderful night. Thank you for letting me share.